What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actresses comes face to face with a talk show host who thinks he can push anyone around? This is the story of how Diane Keaton, the Academy Award-winning legend, stood up to Jimmy Kimmel in a way that left everyone in the studio speechless. The tension started building the moment Diane Keaton walked onto the Jimmy Kimmel live set. She was promoting her latest film, a thoughtful drama about aging gracefully in Hollywood, something she knew intimately after decades in the business. Characteristic smile that had charmed moviegoers for generations. Jimmy Kimmel, this new movie of yours, another film about getting older in Hollywood. Are we running out of other topics for you to explore? It was an oddly dismissive way to start an interview, especially with someone of Keaton's caliber. Diane's smile faltered slightly, but she maintained her composure. We don't see enough authentic portrayals of what it means to age as a woman in this industry or really anywhere in society. Jimmy waved his hand dismissively. Sure, but don't you think audiences want something a little more wry, don't know exciting? I mean, how many times can we watch Diane Keaton play the same character? The words hung in the air like a challenge. You could feel the energy in the studio shift. This wasn't playful banter. This was something else entirely. Diane's posture straightened, and her famous warmth began to cool. The same character? She asked, her voice carrying a new edge. I've done comedy, drama, romance, and thriller. What exactly do you mean by the same character? Jimmy seemed to realize he had stepped into dangerous territory. But instead of backing down, he doubled down. Come on, Diane, you know what? I mean the neurotic, quirky woman who's trying to figure out her life. It's like your brand at this point. The audience was completely silent now. Even the band behind Jimmy's desk looked uncomfortable. This wasn't the typical softball interview format late-night shows were known for. This felt personal and Diane took a deep breath. But even then, reducing any performance to a simple stereotype shows a fundamental misunderstanding of what acting actually involves. Are we about to get a lecture on the craft of acting? Because I have to tell you, audience doesn't really come here for acting classes. It was a cruel thing to say to Sign to make her look pretentious for defending her work. But Diane Keaton hadn't survived decades in Hollywood by being easily intimidated. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes locked on Jimmy's. What, Jimmy? You're right. Your audience doesn't come here for acting classes. They come here to see their favorite celebrities treated with respect. They come to learn something interesting about the people they admire. But it seems like you're more interested in cheap shots than actual conversation. Jimmy's writers and producers were likely scrambling behind the scenes. But Jimmy himself seemed determined to keep pushing. Cheap shots? He laughed, though it sounded forced. Diane, I'm just asking the questions everyone's thinking. I mean, let's be honest here. When was the last time you did something that really surprised people? When was the last time you took a real risk? That was the moment everything changed. You could see it in Diane's face, the exact second when she decided she had had enough. Her jaw tightened, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of someone who had earned every ounce of respect she commanded. A real risk. She repeated slowly, Jimmy, I've been taking risks my entire career. Her tone was calm, deliberate. I took a risk when I chose to age naturally in an industry that demands women stay frozen in time. Age when Hollywood typically discards women. Jimmy tried to interject, but Diane held up a hand. The simple gesture stopped him cold. But do you know what the biggest risk I ever took was? She continued, coming on shows like this and trusting that the host would treat me like a human being instead of a punchline. The studio fell into an uneasy stillness. Still, he pressed on. Look, Diane, he said, with a condescending tone. That made a few people in the audience wince. I think you're being a little sensitive here. This is comedy. This is what we do. We poke fun. We have a laugh. Keaton, a woman whose career had spanned generations of comedy. She said, her voice icy. Jimmy, there's a difference between comedy and cruelty. There's a difference between poking fun and being deliberately disrespectful. And there's a huge difference between a joke and what you've been doing for the last 5 minutes. Jimmy shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but pride wouldn't let him back down. Oh, come on, he scoffed. This is Hollywood, Diane. This is the business. If you can't take the heat, if I can't take the heat, Diane interrupted, her voice now burning with conviction. Jimmy, I've been taking heat in this business since before you knew what a television camera was. I've dealt with directors who screamed at me, producers who tried to intimidate me, and critics who dismissed me. But I've never had to deal with a host who invited me onto his show just to tear me down for entertainment. Even the band. The leader was avoiding eye contact. The audience was completely still. Jimmy's usual sidekick seemed to have vanished from the moment entirely. This wasn't banter anymore. This was a reckoning. Jimmy attempted to change gears, flashing what he must have assumed was a disarming smile. Diane, look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Why don't we start over? Tell us about your new movie. Diane didn't flinch, double quotes. No, Jimmy, we're not starting over. Because this moment is exactly the problem. You think you can say whatever you want, hurt whoever you want, and then just reset when it becomes inconvenient for you. That's not how respect works. The last of Jimmy's practiced charm began to fade. His tone sharpened. Diane, with all due respect, you came on my show. This is my house. These are my rules. If you don't like how I run things, maybe late. Night television isn't for you anymore. The room went cold. The implication that Diane Keaton, an icon of film since the 1970s, no longer belonged in today's entertainment landscape, landed like a slap. Diane sat back in her chair and regarded him silently. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, but the gravity in it was unmistakable. Jimmy, do you know how many talk show hosts I've sat across from in my career? Jay Leno, Conan O'Brien, Ellen DeGeneres. She leaned slightly forward. Every single one of them understood that their job was to make their guest look good, to create a moment of connection with the audience, to celebrate the work and the person sitting in that chair. Jimmy moved to speak, but Diane continued without pause. But you do it at someone else's expense, Diane said evenly, her voice cutting through the silence. You think being funny means making your guests squirm, putting them on the defensive, shrinking them so you can feel bigger. Jimmy leaned forward, his tone rising defensively. Now hold on a second. I don't need a lecture on how to do my job. I've been doing this for years. Millions of people watch me every night. I think I know what I'm doing. Do you, Diane? Asked, not blinking. Because right now, you have one of Hollywood's most enduring actresses sitting in that chair. And instead of asking thoughtful questions or celebrating decades of work, you've spent the entire interview trying to undermine me. Is that what you think makes good television? Jimmy's face flushed red. His usual on-screen charm was crumbling. You know what, Diane? Maybe you've just been in Hollywood so long, you think everyone owes you something. Maybe you think your reputation makes you immune to criticism. Diane gave a humorless laugh. Criticism? Jimmy, you haven't offered one piece of real criticism tonight. You've tossed out lazy jabs, vague insults, and you've made assumptions about my work without showing any understanding of it. That's not critique. That's just cruelty dressed up as wit. The studio was completely still. No band cues, no laughs, just the mounting tension between the two. Jimmy squirmed in his seat. Look, I'm just trying to have a conversation here. No, Diane said flatly. You're trying to win. You're trying to prove something. But this isn't a contest. I came here to talk about my new film, to connect with your audience. Instead, you've turned it into some kind of ego-driven sparring match. Jimmy slammed his hand on the desk in frustration, a move meant to reassert control, but one that only made him look petulant. Fine, if you don't want to play along, maybe we just end this right now. Diane stared at him. Then, slowly, she smiled not warmly, but the kind of quiet, measured smile that says, "You've already lost." Jimmy, she said, rising from her seat, I've been having this same fight for 4 decades, with directors who tried to scare me, producers who thought they knew better, and critics who thought they could define me. The audience held its breath. And what I've learned through all of it is this: people who try to make you feel small are the ones who feel the smallest. People who tear others down are the ones who doubt themselves the most, and people who confuse cruelty with comedy. They don't understand either. Jimmy's face drained of color. He opened his mouth, but Diane pressed on. You had the chance to create something meaningful tonight. I could have told your audience stories from the golden age of Hollywood. I've worked with legends. I've seen the industry evolve. But instead of a conversation, you wanted a spectacle. She paused to let the words land. But here's what you don't get when you know your own worth. You can't be embarrassed. When you've survived this industry as long as I have, you know exactly when it's time to stop wasting your energy on people who don't deserve it. Jimmy finally found his voice again, weak and pleading. Diane, come on, sit back down. Let's just finish this. We'll talk about the movie, but Diane shook her head. No, Jimmy, we're done. Because now your viewers have seen who you really are. When the cameras are rolling and you think you have the upper hand, they've seen how you treat someone you can't control. She removed her microphone and handed it off with quiet grace. Jimmy scrambled. If I upset you, I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything by it, it's just part of my style. That, Diane said, turning back to him, is the problem. You think cruelty is a style. You think disrespect is part of the brand. But the best hosts in television knew their job was to elevate their guests, not to mock them. She smoothed her dress and stepped toward the exit. You want to know what real comedy is? It punches up, not down. It unites people, not isolates them. It brings light into the room, not shame. Jimmy sat frozen, grasping for something to say, but Diane was already gone. We can work this out, Jimmy said quickly. My producers are probably having a heart attack right now. Diane's expression shifted, but not with sympathy. It was something closer to disappointment. They should be having a heart attack, Jimmy, she said, because what just happened here isn't entertainment. It's not good television. It's not even good business. She leaned forward slightly, her tone measured but unshakable. What happened here is that you forgot the most basic rule of hospitality. When someone accepts your invitation, you treat them with dignity. She reached down and picked up her purse. The gesture, quiet and unhurried, somehow landed with more weight than any of her words. The room felt airless. You know what the tragedy is in all this? She said, standing. Her voice softened, less angry now, more reflective. I came here excited. I was genuinely looking forward to sharing stories, talking about my new film, connecting with your audience. I still love this part of the job after all these years. I still love it. Jimmy saw her moving toward the edge of the set and tried one last time. Then stay, he said. Let's talk about the film. Let's do it now. Diane stopped. She didn't turn around right away. When she finally did, her voice was low. Final. It's too late for that, Jimmy. Your audience has already learned everything they need to know about both of us. She took a step toward the wings, then glanced back. They've learned that I won't be disrespected, and they've learned that you think disrespect is part of the job. She paused. Those are the takeaways from tonight. Not the film, not my work. Just a clear, unfiltered look at who we really are when we think no one's watching. She started to walk again, then stopped a second time. And Jimmy, ... they're always watching. She scanned the audience, her eyes calm. Every person sitting here, every viewer at home. Every clip that will go viral tomorrow, they're watching. How you use your platform, whether you lift people up or tear them down. The camera stayed on Jimmy's face, and in that still frame, you could see the exact moment he understood. This wasn't going to fade by morning. This wasn't just another uncomfortable segment. This was the moment that would follow him. Diane looked at him one last time. I hope you figure out what kind of host you want to be, because right now, your audience deserves better. She turned and walked off the set. Behind the desk, Jimmy remained frozen, his usual grin, nowhere to be found. The studio was silent. No applause, no music. Just the quiet reckoning of what had taken place. The cameras kept rolling. They captured his stunned expression. They captured the audience, still processing, and they captured the final echoing truth of Diane Keaton's exit. It wasn't a dramatic walk-off. It was a matter in knowing when enough is enough and walking away with your dignity intact.